Hey, everybody. Well, what have you been doing all day? Steve Dangle here on the Sportsnet YouTube channel, and we're going to watch the expansion draft, and we're all going to pretend like we don't know anything. That's not true. A lot happened today. We already know a lot happened today, and we're going to talk about it. Us, you and me, the chat. Oh, and also, who's this? Did I look the wrong way.
No, you
there
looked
he
the
is.
wrong way. No, I'm looking the wrong way too. There we go.
So now I know to look the wrong way. High five.
Yes, we're not going to pretend that the picks weren't all out there all day long.
Hey, man, Jesse, let me say your name. Jesse Blake, everybody. Yay!
Thank you for having me.
The producer of the Steve Dangle podcast. I don't know if you heard of it. Jesse Blake joining us. Wow. I mean, not a bad way to rip the Band-Aid off, eh? With this chaotic stream.
I feel so honored because this is your thing. It's watch blank with Steve Dangle. And now I get to join in, and now it's watch the expansion draft with Jesse and Steve. So it's a lot of fun. I feel honored to walk into your sacred space.
I like that you gave yourself the first name.
What do you mean?
You just
said Jesse and Steve.
Yeah, you did.
That's all you noticed? Your name wasn't first?
How dare you? So, everybody, here's the plan. It's a little different from how we did the watch a Leafs game. Very short-lived watch a Leafs game. Watch a Habs game and watch the Stanley Cup final. Technically, watch a Leafs game was the longest because the Habs beat Vegas in 6. It's going to be different. So with that one, it was me yapping away, and you heard me yapping away, and I talked to you in the chat. But you also got to see the game. We're going to be our own broadcast. We're going to be our own thing with our own graphics. We're going to be talking about the picks as they happen, delete, are announced, because supposedly they've already happened and we know them already. Right. We're going to break them down. Some people are like, oh, God, well, what are you even going to talk about? Jesse and I have done longer shows with less things to talk about.
We recorded during the entire pandemic 2 times a week with nothing to talk about.
From like March till July. We never really stopped, did we?
No, we didn't. At one point, we had a hot dog eating contest.
We had a scientist come on to explain what COVID was.
Yeah.
It was April 2020. It was a time.
Yeah. So don't worry, we'll talk about stuff.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's side deals potentially, maybe, possibly. And also, Elliot Friedman threw me off just 30 seconds before we began. So Jamie Alexiak. Mm-hmm. I don't know, Jesse. We're gonna go wherever the wind takes us before the picks are announced. But supposedly, the Dallas Stars are taking Jamie Alexiak. Or nope, Dallas Stars are losing Jamie Alexiak to the Seattle Kraken, pending free agent. So a lot of people didn't have Seattle taking free agents, but they are, and they are signing them.
Quite a few of them too.
Yeah, a surprising amount. But it's interesting because a lot of teams didn't really leave anybody. Like, for example, I don't remember who you picked in your mock draft, Jesse, but I picked Adam Mashurin. Who I didn't you as well?
For Dallas?
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. Yes, I did have Adam Mashurin.
They didn't leave a lot, and he's a really good AHL producer. I don't think he's played an NHL game.
No. I remember I referenced he had 100 points for the Kitchener Rangers, and you laughed at me like that was important.
Well, I laughed at you because you just said the Rangers.
Well, you should know it was the Kitchener Rangers.
It could have been Oakville. I don't know. Or are they the Raiders? Doesn't even matter. Anyway, so instead of losing Mashurin, the Dallas Stars lose Jamie Alexiak, big defenseman, brother of Penny, noted Canadian Olympian. And Frege 4 minutes ago tweeted, Jamie Alexiak to Seattle is 5 years, approximately $4.6 million per year. That is large. It's large to match Jamie Alexiak, who is one of the biggest players in the league. He might be the biggest player in the league once Zdeno Chara retires. He's 6'6" or 6'7".
6'7".
He and Dustin Byfuglien once collided, and it reminded me of the time Brock Lesnar superplexed the Big Show and it broke the ring in WWE. It's just two big boys colliding together. I think the number one thing that we're going to end up discussing tonight, and the number one thing we're going to discover throughout the stream, Jesse, is Seattle's not done. Once all these picks happen, they're not done. They're not close to done, even once we see all the side deals. The team on paper is far too incomplete, even for an expansion team.
Especially in the forward group. Like that, you look at that and you're like, okay, Ron Francis, he's just getting started here. Like the defense is kind of solid. The goalies, there's only 3 of them. But the forward group especially, there needs to be some work done.
Goalies, I was very surprised. And I suppose we'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. But Francis said the number one weapon that Seattle is going to have, or the number one thing that they covet, is cap space. And what gave me pause, I was listening to 31 Thoughts yesterday, and they gassed me up at the end, and they promoted the stream, and I was like, thank you very much, Jeff and Elliot. They talked about how Seattle and Ron Francis have permission to spend to the cap. So Ron Francis values cap space, but they have permission to spend to the cap. Those two things don't correlate unless you realize tomorrow's going to be July 22nd and it's going to be another day. Today is the expansion draft. Tomorrow there will be a lift on moves. Other teams can make moves. And then the very next day is the first day of the draft where teams tend to lose their minds. And then it's the second day of the draft where teams tend to lose their minds. Then they'll have a few days to catch up and read a newspaper. And then it'll be free agency where they will lose their minds. And then they'll run out of cap space. And then what do you do if you're one of the 31 teams around the NHL who doesn't have any cap space? You call Daddy. You call Daddy Ron, who's got all this cap space.
I don't know how Ron Francis would feel about you calling him Daddy.
Ron Daddy Francis.
No.
As he's named. By the way, click like and subscribe. I'm a horrible YouTuber. Click like, click subscribe, smash that like button.
Is Mark Bergevin calling? We're going to get into this later, but is Mark Bergevin calling Ron Francis Daddy today?
No, everyone calls Mark Bergevin sir. I don't think Ron Francis is going to be calling Bergevin at all. Because supposedly there's some bad blood there. Another thing revealed on the 31 Thoughts podcast. Bergevin got tired of being pushed around, and that's sort of one thing led to another. That's another thing we should actually pause on. Beyond the fact that Seattle's not taking Carey Price, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. We kept hearing first and a third, first and a third, first and a third. That is what it's going to cost for Seattle to do something that they don't want to do, right? If you want to make a side deal, it's going to cost you a first and a third. We already know that's not true. Because supposedly it was, I believe it was a second and a prospect or a second and a fourth. Something about a second round pick is what Seattle wanted from Montreal to not take Jake Allen.
Right.
And Montreal didn't take it. Do you think, Jesse, let me ask you this before we get to some chat questions. Do you think it's possible that that's just Ron grinding teams, and at the last minute, he's like, you know what, we're starting from scratch. Instead of a first and a third, a second and a fourth sounds good.
I think there's a lot of equivalence in a first and a third and a second. You know, like what's the big difference between a high second round pick and a late first round pick? I think you make the exception if it's the right guy. And like Ron Francis, he's a smart guy because I think a lot of people are confused by what's happening here. It's either
yes,
he's a genius and he's outsmarting everybody, which it kind of looks like because on the surface you're like, oh, what's going on here? But so many things are going to come to fruition. We're going to see so many deals, and it's going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to trust the process here. I'm going to take the 76ers old phrase here. I'm going to trust the process, and I think there's something going on here with Seattle and like them avoiding Jake Allen, them not taking Carey Price. Like it's all going to come out, and there's so many good players available that they're bound to have a competitive team no matter what. Even on paper now, you're like, okay, this is a maybe playoff team. And then they're also going to make all these moves. They're going to maybe get Strome for Giordano. Like that right there puts them in contention, especially in the division that they're in that looks extremely weak.
Well, and also, whoa, why would they pick a UFA? Couldn't they just sign them? Don't think that hadn't occurred to them. To be honest, I'm not totally sure why they would pick a guy unless they weren't sure they could get it done.
Yeah.
Right?
They really valued that window, that little 48-hour window that they have exclusive rights. They really valued that. So why not take advantage of it?
Why not? But there have got to be other guys where they're like, okay, we're going to get them without the window. I don't know who they're going to be. St. Louis seems like a target of theirs because I believe their pick is, my guess is it's going to be Vince Dunn. Right. But Frege was talking a lot about potentially Jaden Schwartz. 31 Thoughts yesterday is a banger. Like once the expansion draft and the stream is done, it'll be interesting. Well, I suppose we'll just talk about it because he's just going to upload another one and we're going to have a podcast. But like, I don't think the craziness ends today. No. He was talking about Nicolas Deslauriers being worth a first-round pick.
Because he's the next Tom Wilson.
Because he's next Tom Wilson. And Jesse, I gotta say, listen, I got a lot of hot takes that suck. I'm proud of that it's from years ago. From years ago when Tom Wilson got his big contract and we were like, what are the Washington Capitals thinking? And a big thing we were talking about was market inefficiency. I want to say Alex DeBrincat was drafted right around then. And we were like, how could so many teams pass up on this guy? Because small, skilled guys were the market inefficiency. No one was drafting them. No one was using them. Or people were drafting them too late. Braden Point, for God's sake, went 79th overall in 2014. DeBrincat, I believe, second rounder just a couple years later. When Wilson signed his contract, at some point, I remember saying the market inefficiency is big dudes who punch you in the face.
All right.
And listen, the goons, the guys who play 5 minutes a night, that's done. That's done. We don't do that anymore. Tom Wilson's not that. And now there's no one to check him. There's no one he can score. He can score. But he can also make your night awfully miserable. And so few teams have any answer to it.
I'm going to give you the name of someone Seattle selected that may be an answer to a Tom Wilson type, a bottom six forward, an energy man who's paid a little bit too much, but he plays that role. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Brandon Tanev.
Oh, man, no way.
I'm telling you, that's a guy who they selected because of that exact reason. Like, you're getting a bottom six guy who every time you put on the ice, he's going to bring energy and get your team pumped up.
Well, and the funny thing is, it's not Tom Wilson the Seattle Kraken have to worry about. They're probably going to see him once or twice a year. It's Ryan Reeves, right? I believe they're in the same division now, in the Pacific.
The divisions are weird now. I got to look at them.
I think the team that was there that is no longer there is Phoenix. Dollar in the Phoenix jar.
Arizona.
I know Sarah's watching too. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Sarah's mom. It's the Arizona Coyotes. I believe are moving to the Central. I believe. And Seattle will be the new team in the Pacific. And it's such disrespect. Like, especially if you're like a Canucks, Oilers, or Flames fan. Because now for the second straight year, you're going to be in a different division and everyone says it sucks. Because the North Division sucks. Now they're in the new Pacific. The Pacific sucks.
You know what? Prove us wrong. Like, we've been waiting for the Oilers and Canucks to prove us wrong for like half a decade now. So, the ball's up there. Go get it.
The Canucks I'm fascinated by what they're going to do this offseason. I wonder if they're one of the teams that made a side deal. I don't know. Probably not, on account of I had them taking Cole Lind.
Yeah. Cole Lind looks like the prospect that you should take off the list, right?
Yeah. I want to see who won. Because remember, I think it was Adam had the most right picks from our podcast.
From the Vegas one.
Yeah. I think I was second and you were a bum.
I was, yeah.
But none of us even got halfway there.
This one's interesting. Because like there's so many off the board picks and so many side deals and trades that I have no idea how many we got right. Like at first glance, I'm like, I got a handful just because like I didn't expect it. And like an obvious one like Gord, I took Patrick Maroon just for giggles, you know?
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I laughed at that one. Do you want to do some questions before we start from the chat?
Sure. We probably got time for like one or two.
Okay, well, we'll start with a great name. Hello, I'm Bleh. If you could have protected 2 more Leafs players, who would they have been?
Ooh. Steve, you go first.
So what's going around today is, should the Leafs have protected Justin Hall? It's a tough conversation because two things are true. Right-handed defensemen are hard to replace, and he's mediocre. Those 2 things are true.
Things also true.
Yes.
He is the only partner that Muzzin has really found a fit with.
I think Muzzin is the only partner he has found a fit with. You know what I mean? I think Muzzin could fit with anybody. Muzzin Barry, it's not really that it didn't work.
It didn't work.
But it didn't. Yeah, but whose fault was that? Was it Muzzin or Barry's?
That's fair.
I think I've seen enough of Jake Muzzin to think it was Tyson Barrie, personally. But the question has nothing to do with defensemen, because the Leafs were never going to protect 2 more defensemen. It's how do you get to 7-3 if you're the Leafs? So I guess here's what everyone wants.
So the question was, we get 2 more guys to protect?
Yeah.
So we get like 9-3 or 7-5.
I think the question is implying going 7-3 instead of 4-4.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
okay.
So I would expose Justin Hall is what I would do, because I could only do Riley, Muzzin, Brody. Easy. So you got Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, Marner, McCann, who's no longer
So
there.
in this world, the McCann trade happens as well.
Yeah, oh yeah. In this world, the McCann trade happens. Kerfoot, but then the problem is, then what? Like, you're gonna
Simmons?
you gonna protect Simmons?
Just because you got nobody else?
Spez's protection is he outright will refuse to go to where you are and just retire.
Engvall's not a bad protection.
I'm not protected. Yes, it is. Yes, he is. He's someone who the Leafs should try to move on from. He's someone the Leafs should try to move on from, just because of the cap hit, unless he improves greatly. So the answer is, like, genuinely, I think I'm allowed to be frustrated with the fact that the Leafs acquired a player that I like. But I think I can also look at the move and go, okay, I understand the logic. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense if you believe in the roster. I think that's everybody's hang up with the situation. It's like, we got a new guy that we think fits better in the situation than the guys we currently have, but you want to stick with the guys we currently have. And by you, I mean Dubas and like the management team.
But also giving up Hollander in a 7th instead of whatever Seattle was asking for, which
Hall or Dermott or whatever.
Or that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a difficult one. By the way, so we have behind the scenes, folks, I believe we have a board of the rules for the draft, just to sort of, there it is. So teams can protect, by the way, click like and subscribe. This board wasn't cheap. Teams can protect 8 skaters and a goalie, or 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie, which is basically what we were just talking about. Some teams chose 4-4. Other teams 7-3. I think most teams were 7-3. Kraken must select 1 player from each of the 30 NHL teams, excluding Vegas. So this is not new. That was negotiated when Vegas joined the NHL. We all saw Vegas as being garbage, and they were going to build their way up, and then 4 years later, they're going to get a good player taken. Well, that's not fair. We just paid all this money to join the NHL. We don't want to do that. So I don't think any of us saw them going to the Final Four in 3 of 4 straight years. Good for them. And Seattle can't just get 30 defensemen or 30 goalies. Can you imagine? So they have to select at least 14 forwards, 9 defensemen, and 3 goalies to be picked. The other 4 can be any position they want. Vegas, I believe, just loaded up on D-men, and they had Vadim Shipachyov, who I believe was their second highest paid forward. He played 4 games for them, and then they ditched him and he went back to Russia. And we said, what are these guys doing? They're stupid. And then they went to the Stanley Cup final.
All right.
It was quite ridiculous.
I'm looking forward to seeing who the guy on this team is that ends up scoring 40 goals. Who's the guy who should have been playing higher up in the lineup all this time? Everybody's money's on Yanni Gourde, but I don't consider him, a surprise out of nowhere. We kind of expect that when he's been on championship team for the last 2 years, Yep. Who's the out of nowhere? He was a third liner his whole career, and now he's scoring 40 goals for Seattle.
Well, that's why I was looking for guys like McCann, who we talked about off the top of the show, with Dallas, who we already know Dallas didn't lose. But I was looking for guys with really good AHL production. McCann was one. Tyler Benson was another with Edmonton, and we already know he didn't go. Mm-hmm. Colin Blackwell's an interesting one, and there's a bunch of noise around his name. It sounds like he was selected by Seattle away from the Rangers, and then he's going to get traded back to the Rangers. I'm very excited to see what happens there.
Mm-hmm. Eberle putting up big numbers. That's not a surprise either, even though he's not really a goal scorer, but we expect Eberle to perform.
Eberle's more like James Neal. You know what I mean? Like James Neal, do you remember, people forget the first days of Vegas, because they were actually bad. They just won. They won games with...
What does that mean?
They won games when it was by the seat of their pants. It was Marc-Andre Fleury stopping 50 shots a night and James Neal scoring 75% of his team's goals. And that could be Jordan Eberle.
Imagine calling a team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals actually bad.
They didn't end that way. When was the moment for you where you were like, oh, they're good? It's not just hot, they're good.
Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals.
Wow, that long?
No. I think midway through the year, everyone was like, okay, they're on a bit of a heater here, and we don't expect it, but they're a legit team if they're winning these games. It's just so unexpected. It doesn't mean that we don't believe in it. It's just that we're caught off guard.
Yeah. So I'm being told by producer Drew. So producer Drew and producer Stu, you may remember from the streams. Producer Drew is saying it looks like Boston will be the first pick. So that's very interesting, because I thought Boston was going to be second pick because it starts alphabetically by team name. So Avalanche, Bruins, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the draft lottery, when a team moves and you're like, that means activity.
Mm-hmm.
I see Boston going first and I see the Avalanche not there, and I immediately think Landeskog. That's the first place my mind goes. Supposedly they took Donskoy. I don't know. Maybe. Listen, you all knew we were going to try to jazz it up because all the picks have been announced. I'm very curious.
So the rumblings were that they talked to Landeskog and they didn't get anywhere. So did that change in the last, 4 hours?
Here's the thing with Gabriel Landeskog. He's got to sign somewhere. So,
yeah.
I know he's upset with Colorado. He, I guess, didn't get anywhere with the Kraken, or supposedly didn't get anywhere with the Kraken. He obviously thinks he's worth X amount.
60 million.
Yeah, sure. We'll say it's 60 million. I believe hearing that as well. Yeah. But what if it's simply not there? What if it's 58? No, I want 60.
The only way for him to find out is you wait till, what day is free agency? July 28th?
July 28th. Dude,
that's the only way for him to find out.
This week is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Before we get to our first picks, some more questions. God, there's so many places to go. Jonathan, what's going on with that Carolina pick? So they picked Morgan Geekie. I guess we shouldn't talk about him too much on account of we're going to have to talk about him later.
We got to do a deep dive when the pick comes up.
Yeah, I will say this. Morgan Geekie is one of the youngest players. He turned, interesting. I was going to say he's 22. He's not 22. It's because he turned 23 yesterday. He is one of the youngest players, if not the youngest player that Seattle selected. And he was a player that I looked at. People are looking at Jake Bean. They think he can be an NHLer soon. I selected Nino Niederreiter. Who did you have, Jesse? Do you remember?
I also had Niederreiter.
It's a tale as old as time. A team loses Niederreiter for next to nothing, and then he goes on and he's very good for them.
And goal scoring is just at such a premium that like he was one of the few guys where you're like, okay, I'm gonna get him, and he's gonna go right into the top six and score goals for me.
Yeah, great two-way player. But Morgan Geekie was a guy I looked at because, okay, not everyone can be an established vet. Like you're gonna need AHL guys, and you're also gonna need young guys and depth guys. And there's no desire to have a guy who makes like $3 million in your fourth line, right? It works some places, Long Island. That's basically it. Morgan Geekie was a name that I looked at. We'll talk about it more later, but it's not as crazy as you think.
There were also talks about maybe a Dougie Hamilton deal, but that also didn't work out.
I mean, they could just get him.
They could
potentially just get him.
It's the same thing with Tarasenko. Well, I assume we'll get to Tarasenko too, but like
we'll get to everybody.
Situation where you retain and you just get them.
Gamer Mom, would you have selected Price?
Steven.
You need a minute?
Go ahead.
I would not have, and here's why. Seattle has been preparing for this for months. And they had a plan up until the protected lists. And Montreal goes and throws this big monkey wrench right in the middle of the whole thing. And you're prioritizing cap space. And there's all these reasons to be seduced by the idea of Carey Price. He's 34. There's all these injuries. And like we think Bergevin and the Habs could be hamming it up with the injuries, but let's not forget he missed like a month and a half or whatever it was leading up to the playoffs. And I believe that was a concussion. We know he's had knee and hip issues and everything. All those things are true, even if the reports are conveniently timed. Seattle did well to not be seduced by what could be a good opportunity. What do you think?
I think there were too many good goalies for you to go after Carey Price. There are too many young, good goalies for you to settle on Carey Price. Like, I would have went with Kakkonen, even though the rumors say they didn't select him, but maybe they did. Who knows? I would have gone with Kapanen, Vanacek, Drieger, and Joey Decourt. You get 4 goalies right there who could potentially fight for either your 1B job or your 1A job. Like, you didn't need to select Carey Price. Why not use that cap space, that asset, to go after something else? Like, I understand the argument, hey, you got to sell jerseys and all that, but you got to also run a hockey team. And the smart thing to do is take some of the very talented goaltenders who are very young and super cheap. Those 4 guys I just named, besides Drieger, all make under $1 million. Why not go that route? And I assume Ron Francis is going to.
I think people are grossly overestimating how much teams make on jerseys.
Jersey sales are also they go into a pot for every team.
Oh, there we go. Hey, the pick is
in.
So we got the pick. I believe, is this Boston? This is Boston. The first pick, Jeremy Lauzon. So I got this one in my mock draft. Hooray! Hooray for me. Jesse, what do you think about how wrong you were and how right I was with Jeremy Lauzon?
I would have gone with Connor Clifton. But the Boston situation with the guys they had exposed is you were going to get a young defenseman in either way you wanted to go. So like Seattle, they had a toss up. You had just your pick of young defensemen. They went with Lauzon. So like it's okay. I would have went with the younger guy, but that's just me. How do you feel about being right?
Oh God, it's where I belong. It's where I belong being right. So he's locked up one more year. He's going to make $900,000 in actual money. His cap hit is $850. And Cap Friendly has him listed as a left/right defense. So we talked about this on the podcast a little bit. It's interesting because some players will be a center on one site and then a winger on another. A left D on this site, right D on the other. Cap Friendly, in my personal opinion, gets it right the most often. So here's a guy with flexibility on the cap, flexibility on the fact that he's young, flexibility on the fact that he's an RFA when his contract expires, and flexibility on which side of the ice he plays. Second round pick, 52nd overall from 2015. It's a bummer for Boston, who has really lost a lot of guys on their back end in recent years. Miller just retired. They lost Chara. Torrey Krug went to St. Louis. I mean, it's not like Boston has nothing. Obviously, right. No team with Charlie McAvoy is that hard done by. But it does take a toll after a while. Who's our next pick? Who we got?
Oh, they're coming in quick.
Yes, they certainly are. Thank goodness.
Nice.
From the Buffalo Sabres, Will Borgen. So, Jesse, there were some teams where people joked, why even bother picking anybody? And with the Buffalo Sabres, I don't know if it was a joke. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if it was a joke. But this is a guy who was from the same draft as Lozon, 4th round, though, in 2015. Shoots right, which means he has trade value just by waking up in the morning, but he doesn't have a contract. He's an RFA. Jesse, what do you think?
So there were a couple of things going on here. One was, I originally on the podcast, you and I both picked Zegmas. That's who we had.
No, I had Borgen.
Oh, you had Borgen? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then I guess it was just me. Whatever. I was wrong again. So, but then the other thing is Ristolainen, you protect him because that's a trade asset. You don't want to lose him for nothing. So I think Kevin Adams, Galaxy brain that. You protect the guy you want to move later for assets. Great job. And then Borgen, he has to go through waivers. So if he doesn't make the Kraken, does he slip through to waivers and then Buffalo picks him back up? Is this you don't lose the guy at all because he might not make their team?
It's entirely possible. That is an extremely good point, Jesse.
I don't know. It's the right pick for the Kraken because, like you said, there isn't much else there. But yeah, we'll see if he goes back to Buffalo.
We have another pick, and I believe it's going to stay with the the trend. Dennis Cholowski from the Detroit Red Wings. Just bringing him up. So we have another defender. So Lozon can play left and right. Borgen was right. Cholowski is left. He's a first-round pick from 2016, 20th overall. So I got to believe that's disappointing for Detroit on a few fronts. Maybe depended on a little too hard, a little too early in his career. It's not. I would take any numbers you see with Cholowski with a grain of salt. Because, I mean, you talk about a guy who was thrown to the Wolves on a garbage team. He had 7 goals in 52 games as a rookie, and then that seemed to evaporate. To me, that's an issue with the team's development of the player and not the player. What do you think?
Right. So, but if you're Ron Francis, you, Steve Dangle, you traded bodies with Ron Francis. Tell me why you don't take Troy Stecher, a right-handed defenseman who's only 27 and makes $1.7 million.
Honestly, that's a great question. Maybe I got Troy Stecher. I think he was my pick purely for the purpose of flipping him. But I think that's a stats nerd way of thinking because I know Hockey Twitter is high on Troy Stecher. Wasn't he on Team Canada at the World Championships? I think we're high on Troy Stecher, but if I'm not mistaken, he could have been had this past season for nothing on waivers. So
like for the rest of the NHL, they could have just picked him up.
I think his value within the NHL is lower than it is. I think it's lower than it is on Hockey Twitter. With the nerds. But with Cholowski, we have yet another guy who needs a contract, and that was a big thing with my mock draft. Is I had a ton of players who I had to re-sign. Ron Francis and company, busy bees.
Yeah, I think I avoided that because I was like, okay, there's no way they're gonna go for the UFA route and they're gonna take that 2-day window or whatever it is, and I think they would just skip it and try and sign them when they're actually UFAs. But they've done the complete opposite and signed guys in the window.
Nick from the chat, this decor is better than the Leafs after 3 picks, isn't it?
Stop it.
Words hurt. Words hurt. All right. Hey, click like, click subscribe, tell all your friends. We're watching the expansion draft. Gosh darn it. Well, actually, no, you're not. You're watching our version of the expansion draft. Is this a side cast or is it just a cast?
I guess it's sidecast. You put us on next to the television.
Right. I thought the watch a game streams were sidecast because I was actually beside the stream.
Oh, you're classified. No, I would say that was just a cast. You're just watching it. You know, this is you put us on your laptop next to the TV. I don't know.
As we wait for our next pick, Paulie, don't they seem to be wasting their biggest weapon, cap space? So this is obviously not based on the 3 picks so far because they make nothing pretty much, or need contracts. But they have drafted some guys with big money and they've signed some guys to big money. Listen, just because you don't like a few individual deals doesn't mean they're out of cap space. They're super not. And Giordano, there's almost $7 million supposedly that they're trading away, which that almost covers Larson and Alexiak right off the bat. So no, I don't think they're wasting cap space.
Right. And I don't think we can take the team that was leaked out there at face value. I think just slowly looking at everything that's coming in now and thinking about all the side deals that were probably made, like I don't think whatever cap space that team took up is what's going to actually be the case.
From Millie, I love this question. Could Seattle pull a Vegas? Millie, we have to discuss what pulling a Vegas is. Because for Seattle to truly pull a Vegas, we would have to think that they stink. We all thought Vegas was going to stink, and they didn't. We got a pick here.
What is that?
From the Florida Panthers, Chris Driedger. No surprise here. We knew this for quite some time. Elliot Friedman reporting, I believe, a 3-year contract, 3.6 per.
10.5 overall.
Right. So he was a pending UFA. This dude's going to be like the starting goaltender for the Seattle Kraken. He was arguably Florida's best goalie last year. Better than Bobrovsky anyway. Spencer Knight sort of came in and stole the show there at the end. I think he got the Game 6 treatment against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of intrigue because he has the same agent as Carey Price. And what a weird niche. I back up $10 million goalies. Like there's only 2 in the league, and this poor guy was going to play behind both potentially. I don't know.
If you're Bill Zito, are you kicking yourself for the Bobrovsky deal? Because like $10 million deal to Bobrovsky just costs you Chris Driedger.
Well, if I'm Bill Zito, the great thing about having a guy like Bill Zito is he's going to do whatever he has to do to get rid of the Bobrovsky deal on account of he's not the dude who signed it. You saw Bill Guerin.
That's true.
With Minnesota in the Parise Suter contracts. Out. Given the boot. Get out. Ryan Suter, you hung up on me? I'm not even your friend. I just got here. I don't like you. Get out of here. I'm obviously playing a character, but sometimes you need someone to be ruthless. I'm with you though, Jesse. We're gonna have another pick very soon.
There it is.
And I believe we're gonna stick on this one maybe for a moment because it's the Montreal Canadiens. Cale Fleury, I believe, is a right D. I know he's a defenseman. There seems to be, you got to have at least one Fleury per expansion team.
Yeah, I have right D as well here.
So I was wrong earlier. I think Fleury may actually be the youngest player that Seattle drafted. At very least, he's the youngest player so far. He's still 22 years old. He's not going to turn 23 until November. Third round pick of the Habs from 2017. Seems unbelievable that they could lose a player who they only drafted 4 years ago. So, Jesse, would you prefer Cale Fleury or Carey Price?
I'll take Cale Fleury every day of the week. The price tag on Price wasn't worth it. There's too many other good goalies. Can we get into here the standoff between Bergevin and Ron Francis from 31 Thoughts? Because we touched on it a little, but what do you think happened there? Because according to Elliot Friedman from 31 Thoughts, that there was bad blood between Price and Bergevin, Francis and Bergevin, and at the end Bergevin just said, "Do it, I dare you. Take Carey Price. I'm not giving you Jake Allen," and he didn't do it. He didn't call Montreal's bluff. Ron Francis didn't call it. What do you think happened there?
I think Ron Francis was the mature adult in that situation, because you do not, just to prove your manhood, put your expansion franchise in financial peril. Listen, like, Vegas didn't get a captain until like last year. You know, their flag bearer, everyone talks about Marc-Andre Fleury. Their flag bearer was Derek Engelland, like, in their first season. This is our guy. And he was probably their most confusing pick when they made him. Oh, well, what's confusing? He's from Nevada, or he lived in Nevada or whatever. Okay. But, like, is he good? Like, that was the conversation. So you don't need Carey Price to have a flag bearer. We have a new pick here. A goalie from Ottawa, Joey Decord, who you might remember from this past season. Leaf fans have him in their nightmares. I believe it was his first NHL game. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's free goal night. Free goal night. We got the kid. We got the AHL kid." And I believe he allowed one goal. And the Ottawa Senators won, because that's what they do with the Leafs. So Cale Fleury is still, he's an RFA. I think he's the third RFA already, and we're only on pick 6. Joey Decord, man, they got him at $750,000 for each of the next 2 seasons. 24-year-old goalie. He had an .897 in the NHL, but that was with the Ottawa Senators, who did allow a lot of goals this year. A lot of people like this guy. It's a good pick.
Right, and if you're here comes the next pick. But if you're a Sens fan, you got a lot of goalies, so you should be happy with that pick.
Absolutely. Tampa. This is the big fish so far. Yanni Gourde. If you watch the Stanley Cup Final with Steve Dangle streams, I love this player. I love this player so much. He makes over $5 million. Personally, I think he deserves it. But can he play higher up in the lineup? Jesse, what do you think?
I think he can definitely do it. I think the role he's playing on Tampa was basically like a second line role, even though it was the third line. But my question coming out of all of this was, if you're Tampa, this was probably the most obvious pick out of anything in the entire draft. So why not trade Yanni Gourde?
Why not?
Why not try and get something for him? If you're the Leafs, why don't you do Dermott and Kerfoot and like a 6th for Yanni Gourde? And then Tampa loses like somebody that Seattle wanted back there.
So I think I have a theory there. You got to lose somebody. It's got to be someone. So let's say you trade Yanni Gourde and you get a bunch of futures. Well, then they take Andre Palat, or they take Alex Killorn, and now you're down 2 guys. Like, Tampa could realistically compete for the Stanley Cup again, despite losing a couple guys. It's interesting. They lose Gaudreau, they lose Gourde, really, and they're going to lose Coleman. So they got to build an entire line. But they contain their losses to 1 line, which I actually think, if you're going to lose as many players and as much talent as Tampa is going to, that's not a bad way of doing it. You still get to keep some pretty good players. And for everyone asking about Gourde and, can he play higher in the lineup? You know, this dude's got 2 20-goal seasons under his belt, including a 64-point one.
From the third line.
Third line. From Toronto. I was really hoping this would change. Jared McCann. Jesse, thoughts?
So I have notes in front of me on every single team that I worked on. And for Toronto, I left it blank. And I wrote, Steve, take it away.
Okay, so God, I was getting yelled at from both sides. I was getting yelled at by supporters of Kyle Dubas, and I was getting yelled at. Okay, I was getting yelled at by supporters of Kyle Dubas because I criticized him, and I was getting yelled at by detractors of Kyle Dubas because I praised him in the same sentence. I like to think a sentence that contains both things is relatively level-headed, so I don't feel bad about it. Listen, optically, it looks horrible. Dubas trades for a player, and then he gets a pick and a prospect. It's a 7th-round pick from 2023. I'm not really missing that. Philip Hollander was a guy who I was excited for when the Leafs got him last year. It wasn't even a full year ago. It was the Kapanen trade from last fall. I was excited for that. And trade him for McCann. Oh, well, screw Philip Hollander. We get Jared McCann. And they lose him for nothing 4 days later. All a lot of fans are going to see is a player, hey, they got this guy, could be pretty good. And then they lose him for nothing. But giving Hollander and a 7th rounder 2 years from now, 3 drafts from now, to the Pittsburgh Penguins is far cheaper than what it would have cost to, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, they wanted a 1st and a 3rd to not take Kerfoot. Because if it wasn't Kerfoot, who was it going to be? Dermott? Well, obviously they don't want him. They don't want him. They don't think there's a big enough trade market for him. They don't want him in the lineup. And let's not forget, Dave Haxtell is the first head coach of the Seattle Kraken. He ran the Leafs defense last year. If they wanted Dermott, if he valued Dermott, they would have got Dermott. He clearly doesn't. You're forgetting this guy was a healthy scratch for most of the Leafs Habs series there. So I think the Leafs doing some damage control. Jared McCann was going to end up on the Kraken anyway. I truly believe he was going to be the Pittsburgh pick instead of Tanev. So listen, it's frustrating that they don't get a player who I think is pretty good, but ultimately it is actually kind of an out of the box, clever move.
The point of contention for some of the other fan base, the other angry fan base, is that you shouldn't have protected Justin Hall. You should have let him go to Seattle because the rumors are if he was left exposed, that's who Seattle would have taken over Kerfoot or McCann or Dermott. So I think Hall is valuable to the team, especially at his number and the fact that I like him personally with Muzzin. So I think it was the right move. And you essentially lost Hollander and a 7th. Like the optics of it aren't great because, like you said, people are like, oh, we love McCann, but it's hard for me to get worked up about a guy was never technically like on the roster. Like for 36 hours, you have Jared McCann. He's technically on the roster. Sorry. So, but like, how am I supposed to get worked up about this guy who was never really a Leaf?
Exactly. It's not actually losing Jared McCann. It's losing Hollander and a 7th. So they're one of the very few teams in this league who don't actually lose a player off their roster. But it is, listen, like, I'm upset that the Leafs are losing Zach Hyman, and everyone's like, what, are you stupid? He's 30 and this and that. Can't I just like him?
Right. You can like him in the role he plays and everything.
Yes. Like, fans like teams. Fans like players. I like Jared McCann. I'm a fan. I like Zach Hyman. I'm a fan. Well, okay. We'll get into the numbers later. I like these players. I want them to be on my team. Let me be upset about that. Do we have the next pick? I'm sure some people shut up about the Leafs. Click like, click subscribe, tell all your friends. I said fans and friends at the same time. Tell all your friends. There, Chandler. Tell all your friends.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's the board so far.
Here's what we got. So Lozon, Fleury, Gord, McCann, Dreger, Cholowski, Borgen, Decord. Do you see a trend at all?
They're going to be great on defense. Like,
yes,
that's the thing. That's gonna happen. I think right out of the gate, without even the side deals, based on the rumors, like Seattle's gonna have a tough team, which is exciting. And hopefully they get some more offense because they got Yanni Gord, and that's it.
It's smart. It's so much easier to get forwards than it is defense. And they're doing. Listen, people are talking about them pulling a Vegas. Well, you're going to want to copy what Vegas did successfully. And that was hoard defensemen and trade them. Like, who knows? Alexiak, who knows? Maybe they flip him. Who knows? I kind of doubt it. But
And remember that it's easier to get forwards than defense when you talk about the Leafs protecting Hall and Dermott. So, Hall protecting Hall and not losing Dermott.
Right.
Good defenseman. You'd rather
Yes.
lose the forward.
Yes. Yeah. They're going to be able to flip someone, and go out and get a defender. Who knows? Like, I wonder how married they are to Cale Fleury. For example, young defenseman. He's clearly got value, and someone who they never thought they were going to end up picking. You talk about your slam dunk picks for months. You got to be going, wow. I mean, what are they going to do? What's Carey Price going to do? Wave his no move? Like, there's no way Seattle was thinking that. So I wonder if they flip a guy like Fleury, Borgen. I don't think losing him on waivers, like you mentioned earlier, is something that could happen with Will Borgen. But I would like to think that Seattle's prepared for that scenario.
Yeah, you make the move before that happens.
Producer Tassoni is also in here, and I don't have a cool name for you yet, and I forgot to shout you out at the beginning. I'm really sorry. Click like, click subscribe, tell all your friends we have a pick, my friends, and this is one that we talked about earlier, and we're going to be able to talk about it a little bit more. It'll be up here in a minute. Here it is. The pick is in. It wasn't in before. They had to stuff it into the pick slot. So we have Morgan Geekie.
So this is one you're really excited to chat about because you were almost right on it until you weren't right.
I know. I feel silly. But Jesse, it's just our chance to geek out.
That's boo.
It's just our chance to geek out. One of the youngest players that the Kraken took, he turned 23 yesterday. He's signed one more year, $750,000, and then he'll be an RFA. He's this young, and he's already got games under his belt in parts of 2 seasons for a really good team in the Carolina Hurricanes. You see 9 points in 36 games this past season. I see 4 points in 2 games in the bubble season, and also last year in a very brief stint in the AHL. He played 2 games. He had 4 goals and 1 assist. So this is clearly, you look for your William Karlssons, right? You look for the guys who can really break out. Morgan Geekie.
I see a left-handed defenseman in Jake Bean who they didn't select, who looked just as promising.
I was about to say he is a center, but okay. Next pick. No.
Jake Bean? Lefty.
No, he is. No, sorry. I thought you were confusing Geekie and yeah.
No.
Gavin Bayreuther for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So this one, I'm gonna say I was 25% right. So Cap Friendly released today their list of players who were the most common picks in their mock draft, and Max Domi was one of the top 3. And I had a source tell me Seattle's not taking Domi. No chance. One
of 2 things you broke in the NHL world today.
Yes, I suppose we'll get to that a little bit later. But Bayreuther, he's a defenseman. He's 27. I think there's a side deal there. I'm not totally sure, but I know they didn't want Domi. Next pick, Nathan Bastian with the New Jersey Devils. I'm not going to lie. This is the one that caught me the most off guard because we talked about so many names on our mock draft show, and I don't think we mentioned this player's name once.
Yeah, I had Will Butcher. I thought he made more sense.
Same.
You go with the defenseman who performed well as a rookie and has underperformed as of late, but they went with Nathan Bastian, who I don't know a ton about.
Well, he had 10 points in 41 games last year on the bad, very bad Devils. So take that with a grain of salt. He's 23 years old. Again, there's not a lot of really young guys. So when you see 23, that's Seattle going for youth because that's about as young as they can go. He signed for the next 2 years at $825,000 against the cap. You need depth guys who could perhaps play in the AHL, play on your 4th line, and I suppose he's one of them. And at 6'4", 205 pounds, oh, there's the old school in Ronnie. A guy who played in the 90s. Oh,
and I know Lindy Ruff loved using him on the fourth line and to kill penalties. So like that's something you got to have in your team. Like not every pick's going to be your first line center. You know, you need guys like Nathan Bastian who are going to come in and be your fourth line and kill penalties for you with a big body.
People do straight up forget about that. Next pick, I'm in love. From the New York Islanders, Jordan Eberle. Jesse, why was he available?
Because he makes a lot of money, $5.5 million, I believe, for 3 more years. So Lou said, hey, here's 2 giant contracts. Please take one. And Ron Francis said, yes, Mr. Lou, I will do what you say because I'm scared of you.
So, first of all, yes, I do think that conversation actually happened. Second of all, the Islanders now have some room to play with. And, I mean, Suter and Parise seems like a foregone conclusion, does it not?
No. I think it's Landeskog or Tarasenko.
Baby.
I think
swing for the fences. I love
it. It's you get rid of this Eberle contract. You have a whole bunch of money coming off the books. I know they have to have I know they have Nick Leddy also coming off and Andrew Ladd. Yep. So there's even more room there. So if you can go get one of the biggest fish, Landeskog or Tarasenko, why not do it?
Why not?
Like, who's the type of guy who's like, I'm just going to swing for it, you know?
On the minutia side of it, weird contract for Eberle. So it started, he made $725, then $475. This year he makes $7. So ownership will be happy. But then $475 and $375. He had horrible playoff numbers in Edmonton. Since leaving and going to the Islanders, 9 points in 8 games, 14 points in 22 games, 11 points in 19 games. So the Islanders freeing up space. They obviously think they're good. They've been to the Final Four each of the last 2 years and ran into Tampa both times. Lucky them. But if they're going to continue to have playoff success, Jordan Eberle's been a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And I know you really like Matt Martin and you like that identity line and everything. Ooh, losing Jordan Eberle for nothing, that stings, man.
They're losing him for the $23.6 million in cap space they'll eventually have.
Yes. Well, cap space is great.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do something with it. Geez, over 30,000 people in here. That's wild. Click like, click subscribe. Tell all your friends, all of them, the ones you've neglected. Call your aunt. Call her. Call her right now. Your cousin Bill. Oh, you know cousin Bill. He goes by Will now. We've all been through it over the last year and a half. Anyway, I don't know if we have time before our next pick. Yes, nope. No, we don't.
Nope, it's so right there.
Here's our next pick. Who do we got?
This is, I think, a good one.
Okay, so from the New York Rangers, Colin Blackwell. So I'll get into him briefly, and then Jesse, I think you had some trade shenanigans potentially.
Yeah.
So your classic late bloomer story. He's only 5'9". He's 28 years old. The sort of guy that a lot of NHL front offices would ignore. But he's on a 2-year deal. Made $725 last year, $725 this upcoming year. But in 47 games this past season, he had 12 goals, 10 assists for 22 points, which is not nothing. And it's not even close to nothing. That's actually quite good. And I can't imagine the Rangers are too stoked to lose him, but they might not be, apparently.
So it looks like Giordano is going to be flipped to the Rangers and that Blackwell might go back in the deal. Who knows what the deal is, but it looks like it'll contain some salary retention and Ryan Strome.
Very interesting. So I understand the motivation. So right away, there's a forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Seattle's able to get a forward. They're able to weaponize their cap space a little bit. I wonder what the Rangers' motivation is.
I think they wanted Eichel, and they didn't get Eichel, so you go after another fish and Giordano, or you get Giordano, and then you build on and you get Eichel as well.
Yeah, well, we know they're emotional, right? We know... how do I put this? Their owner is quite eccentric, and Tom Wilson got several people fired on the same day. literally, by this owner. And I wonder if the owner saw a grizzled vet and a captain and a good player, former Norris winner from just a couple of years ago. I wonder if he saw Giordano and he said, whatever it takes, get me that player. Get me that player. I also think he's going to want to hire basically a player that's a pair of skates, a beard, and two fists. I see it. The Rangers, we talked about how the Canucks are fascinating. I want to see what happens with the New York Rangers.
Mm-hmm. And I think
we got an updated board.
And I think like that's going to be one of many trades we'll see.
I have to think so. And we'll get confirmation on those trades as we figure them out. Oh, producer Drew he's screaming at you in the chat right now. Jesse, no. we're gonna figure all that out. But
I'm just reporting the rumors. I'm sorry.
Yeah, whatever. What, did everyone leave? You're all still here, right? Having a great time. Sportsnet YouTube channel. Click like and subscribe. The board is filling up, but there's still lots of slots to continue to fill for this team. There really doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason because you see it's all over the board.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited to see what Seattle comes away with by the end of this expansion draft. And I'm excited to see what they look like by August 1st.
By let's say Thursday, how many goalies do they have?
Oh God. Oh, it ain't going to be 3. I mean, I had 3 in my mock draft, and I got to say I like my 3 better than Seattle's alleged 3. I do.
Who were your 3?
I believe I had Dreger, Vanacek, and Kakkonen. So it's basically the only difference is Decord versus Kakkonen. I really like Kakkonen. Big thing with him, and I suppose we'll talk about it a little bit later, waivers exempt. And Seattle is definitely going to need that. Vegas ran into a bit of trouble with that, if I remember correct, in their first month or two. They basically told guys, listen, a bunch of you are going to sit. Like a bunch of you are going to sit for a few games. You're going to be healthy scratches. Hey, Shipachov, I know you just came from Russia and you're making over $4 million. Here's a comfy spot in our press box. The popcorn's good. The entertainment's great. It's going to be a funny first few months. Man, I'm loving how this fills out. I should also explain something.
Okay.
I keep tweeting August 1st.
Oh, okay.
The reason I paint August 1st as this date where we'll learn everything. 1, it's when I start vacation. 2, we'll be 3 days into free agency. Or no, 4. That's 4 days into free agency. The 28th is going to be a gong show. It always is, right? First day of free agency. So the 28th is basically July 1st every other year.
Uh-huh.
Then there's the deals the next day and the next day and the next day. Then we'll get to August 1st, and that's sort of when it starts to quiet down. If you don't have a deal by 4 or 5 days in, you're probably going to have to wait until right before the season. And it's very interesting, especially for a guy like Landeskog, for example. I mean, he's a big fish, so maybe he doesn't have to worry. But anyone holding out for a few extra bucks, there's more pressure on you this year because the turnaround is faster. You're basically going to have August and September. There's going to be no July to wait through. You're going to have August and September, and then training camp starts. And the season's only going to start 2 weeks later than it usually does?
Right.
Fascinated. August 1st to me is a big date. Sorry, what were you going to say earlier, Jesse?
No, I was going to comment on the board and how there's no reason for the order they're picking. Is it actually the team names that are going in order? Because that's not how it started.
Are the player names? No, because
no.
Oh, it's alphabetical order in the division. Thanks, producer Stu. Okay, that is why.
Why does the NHL just always overly complicate everything?
My old teacher used to say it's like you're eating cereal with a spoon, but you do it like this, like you reach it around your head, and that's very confusing to me. And speaking of confusing, this next pick from the Philadelphia Flyers, whatever division we're on, Carson Twarynski, 3rd round pick from 2016. Him along with Nathan Bastian. Jesse, I don't think we even mentioned this guy's name.
No, not at all.
So 23-year-old, another 23-year-old, 6'2", left winger for the Philadelphia Flyers, and another RFA. This guy, he's got 1 point, and it's a goal in 22 NHL games. I was about to say, his AHL numbers are great, and then I realized I was looking at his WHL numbers.
So in this situation, I wanted Justin Braun. Like, I thought there's another cheap right-handed defenseman that you take from Philly, and they went with Carson.
So I had German Rubtsov, who I couldn't believe was available. Twarinsky was a 2016 draft. Rubtsov was as well, but he was 22nd overall. He's a first-round pick. He played this past season with Sochi over in the KHL. He wasn't great, but I did speak to someone who said, and I quote, "I adore your Rubtsov pick." I mean, you're going to have to take some guesses. Like, I'm sure there are specific reasons why Seattle likes Twarinsky. But to me, Rubtsov was a good, for his talent, obviously a first-round talent, he was a good, let's just see. You get a free player from everybody. You might as well just see.
I wonder how seriously they considered Gostisbehere.
Him as well. The pick is in. Who we got? From the Pittsburgh Penguins. Very interesting pick. Brandon Tanev. So you had him?
I wanted to select Tanev in my mock draft, but I felt like the contract was a little too many years and too much money. If it was expiring after this season, I'm like, yeah, for sure, get Tanev. He's the energy guy I really love on your hockey team, because you need bottom six forwards. Like, I'm always saying that. So I think Tanev slots right in, but it's a little too much money for me. Like, I don't know if 3.9 is the right number for Brandon Tanev, but Seattle clearly thinks it's cheap enough.
Oh, I called it. I still remember this, and producer Drew will remember this too. I was in the Sportsnet digital studio, and on free agency day 2019, I think I called it the worst contract of the day, because it's not that Tanev's a bad player. He's not. But this dude, it's a 6-year contract who, like, let me see this. He had a career high of 29 points in 80 games when this contract was signed. He got a 6-year, $3.5 million contract per season, $1 million signing bonus every year of the 6 years, and a modified no trade clause for the entire thing.
And there's still 4 years left.
And there's still 4 years left. And by the way, 29 is still his career high. Granted, Panini and all that. He scored at a higher pace in each of the past 2 seasons. He was actually half a point a game player this past season for Pittsburgh, which is much better than 29 points. I liked Marcus Pettersson as a right-handed defenseman. Or no, sorry. Well, I think he's a lefty, but he is a defenseman with good fancies. Doesn't put up a ton of points, but Pettersson makes even more. And for a team that actually does need some forwards, I understand why Seattle made this pick. Speaking of picks, we got our third goalie from Washington, Vitek Vanacek. Pick 16 means we're halfway through the league. We're more than halfway through this draft, but we're now halfway through this league because it's a 32-team league now.
This was one of the obvious picks for me, like going right into the expansion draft. You take the young goalie who has so much upside.
Yeah, Vitek Vanacek. I believe he was top 10 in Calder voting. I want to say 6th.
He's 21, 10, and 4 last year with only he was a 908, but like Washington wasn't the best. They were a playoff team, but like save percentage could have been a little higher. But 21, 10, and 4 is pretty damn good.
And he had a 908. It's really not the best, but 37 out of 56 games for this guy. And what's encouraging about that for how well he did is that was very not the plan this season for the Washington Capitals. They had Ilya Samsonov, who's like sort of the heir apparent, the young kid, struggled. He eventually got into it. But remember, Henrik Lundqvist was supposed to play games for the Washington Capitals this past season. And at the deadline, they had to be like, I don't know, Craig Anderson's available. The Washington Capitals goaltending situation was really screwed up last year. And
Samsonov had COVID twice.
Did he?
2 chunks of the season due to COVID, yeah.
Oh, well,
I don't know if he had it or if it was just the protocols, but 2 points of the season he was out with for COVID.
I think he might have been in the group of players, because wasn't it 4 Russian players in the Capitals who got in trouble for violating protocol and they were suspended like 4 games or something?
Sounds correct, yeah.
Yeah, so Vitek Vanacek had to adapt to a pretty rough situation with the Washington Capitals, and only 25 years old, which is, for defense and forwards, we're like, oh man, that guy's old. You figure out what you are. But for goalies, we're like, oh my God, that's a young pup.
This is a team I'm surprised didn't make a side deal.
Yeah?
Yeah,
it would have been good to keep him.
I guess they don't value Vanacek that highly because I guess you still have Lundqvist and Samsonov, so you can probably just lose the asset because you got to lose someone.
Yeah, I don't think you can count on Lundqvist's presence, but 22nd overall pick, first round from 2015. Samsonov is the guy who they want to give the push to, right? And in the bubble season, he, in 26 games, had a .913. With how disrupted last year was, I got to think Samsonov's probably closer to the .913 than he is to the .902. And the back half of the season sure seems to suggest that. But that's Washington. Screw those guys. We're talking about the Seattle Kraken. And I think such an important thing for an expansion team is adaptability and a good attitude, right? And Vanacek's obviously, at very least, I don't know enough about the guy personally, but he is at very least adaptable. And let me tell you, even if year 1 of the Seattle Kraken goes well, it is not going to go smoothly. Right. The season 1 of Vegas went well. It did not go smoothly, not at all, for a wide variety of reasons. Weren't they they had a high school student in net for one game.
They did. So you think it's important that Vanacek had this experience where the 2 guys in front of him went down, because that something similar, who knows what's going to go on in Seattle, but it's an expansion team, so there could be chaos, and you got a guy who can work amongst the chaos.
I think you nailed it. I could very easily be galaxy braining it.
Maybe.
But attitude is really important. I think Fleury being so all in on Vegas helped. Englund being so all in helped. James Neal, I think that all helped. There were 1,000 reasons and 1,000 opportunities for Vegas's inaugural season to go poorly, and it didn't. Even when they had a high school player in net, and Oscar Dansk was like a Vezina, like he was unbelievable, and he was their 3rd goalie. And then they got all the way down to Maxim Lagacé, and he's winning games for them. And they finally got down to Dylan Ferguson. And at some point, I was like, okay, where is everyone hiding the cameras?
There's got to be something to it, too, with guys who are just, hey, we're all outcasts from our original teams. And then now we're all put on this new team. Let's come together and form this great bond. And that's got to push you a little forward. Maybe on some teams you're sick of a guy you got to see every year in and out. And Vegas, we're all new. We're all friends here.
Screw them. Let's prove them all.
Yeah.
Like the Islanders a few years ago. I mean, lots of teams have been the screw it team. Seattle home opener is versus the Vancouver Canucks, by the way. That's going to be October 23rd, the home opener. So, nice. We were talking about when is the season going to begin? Sometime in mid-October there. I don't know if Seattle's starting on the road or not. I don't think we have the full schedule just yet.
The 23rd would be a little later than usual. It's usually around like the 4th or the 12th ish on that Wednesday. But yeah.
I do want to give a shout out to Dylan Ferguson, who I called a high school student because he was when he was playing in the NHL. They called him straight up from Kamloops of the WHL. This past season in the ECHL with the Fort Wayne Comets, he had a .920 save percentage. Good for him. Good for Dylan. Although he's not on the Seattle Kraken, so once again, forget him. See, you thought we weren't going to be able to fill 2 hours, and here I am talking about Dylan Ferguson. Oh, hey,
we got another pick.
Something else? Good. The pick is in. Who do we got? From Arizona, Tyler Pitlick.
So 29, $1.75 million left for 1 year.
So
I have a question here.
Go ahead.
Why do you not take Christian Fisher?
That's a wonderful question, man.
He makes $1 million for 1 year. He's a winger. He's 24. Second round pick in 2015.
They weren't afraid. They weren't bashful about signing unrestricted free agents. And we talked about how they need help up front. Michael Bunting is there. And who was my pick? Oh, I had Lyubushkin. I guess they have too many defenders. And I don't think there was any illusion of him ever making the lineup. Jesse, I think the easiest answer is they like Pitlick more than Fisher, or they think he's got more value, or there's got to be some sort of connection to somebody there. I mean, I'm grasping at straws because I'm like, oh, he's a second rounder. He was 31st overall. Yeah, from 2010.
Right. There are guys with the same kind of resume as Pitlick, except younger, on the Coyotes that you could have just had for free. This pick caught me off guard.
Producer Drew pointing out, by the way, Arizona is in the Central now, and that's why this pick is now.
Because all the divisions are now different.
Because they are screwed up. And I mean, I talked a lot about flipping guys, but I was mostly talking about this summer. So like the Giordano situation, which I suppose we'll get to at the end. You don't go into the season, though, planning to suck. Like a lot of people are like, oh, we'll trade this guy at the deadline. No, you don't go into the season planning to suck. However, Pitlick is a good, in case of emergency, break open glass, in case we suck guy who we can trade for, like, I don't know, third, fourth.
Do you think you can get, I don't even know if that's.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Again, I'm grasping at straws because I'll just be frank. I disagree with the pick. Like this is maybe the third guy I would have selected on the Arizona Coyotes.
And I think you're allowed to do that, Steve.
Oh, I do
disagree with Ron Francis.
No, but I try to be nice and listen. I understand that these guys know more than I do. I really do. But maybe they're like, hey, he's 6'2". Like maybe they have a vision for how they want the third or fourth line to look, because I don't think there's any illusion he's going to be playing higher than that.
It's a Pitlick, Tanev, and Bastion bottom line or something, Maybe
sounds like a bad time.
They have it mapped up on a whiteboard and they have it written down. That's what they want.
Other important thing, he makes more than his cap hit. He's going to make 2.2 this year. We have a new pick. John Quenneville. Jesse, hit me.
Steve, this is your pick to announce because you broke this news today in the Twitterverse, and nobody believed you when you tweeted out Chicago was going to take John Quenneville, including myself, who thought you made a bad joke about Joe Quenneville and forgot that he's no longer in Chicago. Explain your insiderness to the people.
Well, sources say I'm right. No, a source did bring this to me today. And this is why I was so off guard. But a source did bring this to me. And I thought I missed something. And like I straight up said to the person, I'm like, wait, sorry, who reported this? And he's like, no, I'm telling you. I'm like, okay. Okay, so I guess I'll just report it then. Is that cool? And they said yes. John Quenneville, there has to be a side deal there. Scott Powers, I think, from Chicago, said there isn't one, and that doesn't make any sense to me because Quenneville is a UFA, and also like hasn't had the greatest career. That's very confusing to me. Someone who has had a very good career from Colorado, Eunice Donskoy. So producer Drew, sad tears. This is who you lose. It could be Donskoy and Landeskog, though, so don't worry. It could get worse. Jesse, what do you think of Donskoy as I pull up his statisticness?
I think it's the right pick. Like I personally would have gone with hey, we do everything we can to give Landeskog whatever it takes to make him happy, because we have unlimited cap space here. We get a captain who's a captain at 19. He was just on this great team. You give it to Landeskog. But if you can also sign Landeskog after, next week or the 28th, then whoopee, you get both guys, because Donskoy it's a great get for Seattle.
$3.9 million and just a really consistent player. His goals are always in the teens. He can get you in the 30s for points, maybe even flirt with 40. From the Dallas Stars, so this is official, their pick is Jamie Alexiak, and they signed him. We talked about him off the top of the show. Jesse, did you want to say something there?
No, I don't have the Alexiak numbers for his contract. Do you have it in front of you?
Yes, as I pull up. Where did it go? Jamie Alexiak in Seattle is 5 years, $4.6 million. That's from Elliot Friedman, so you know it's real, and you know it's definitely a thing. Not a bad contract for the second most famous Alexiak. It's true. Penny Alexiak is more famous than Jamie.
Are we going to see her swim in the next 2 weeks? The Olympics start Friday, don't they?
I'm pretty sure, yes. I'm pretty sure. Alexiak, I pulled up his numbers. There's really no point, though, because you don't get him for his numbers. You get him for the fact that he is 6'7", 255 pounds. Right. He's a lot of dude. I will pull up these numbers. When Dallas made it to the Stanley Cup final in the bubble, they played 27 games, which is absurd. He had 5 goals, and which... Yes, 5 goals would have been a regular season high for him, and he scored that in the playoffs. So he just caught, what is it, magic in a bottle?
Yeah, the number that stands out to me from the bubble is the 22 minutes. Like 22 minutes a game in the bubble for a Stanley Cup run. Like that solidifies you in my mind as, hey, you can play top minutes on any team in this league. Like this is a great get for Seattle.
Yeah. If you love big boys, he's a good pick. And if you like just a minute eating defenseman, he's a good pick.
He's one of the few guys in the NHL who can look down on me.
That's right. Jesse's what are you, 6'4"?
6'4.5", 6'5"
Yeah.
I gotta look up to Alexiak.
Sounds different when you do it. I say 5'10.5", and everyone thinks I'm short. Minnesota, Carton Soucy. One of the more surprising picks, I'm going to say, not because Soucy is bad. He's actually quite a good pick, and I saw him taken in some mock drafts. He's 26, 17 points in 50 games as a defender for the Minnesota Wild. 6'5". So this is going to be one of the biggest.
It's a big team.
It's a very big team. Carson Soucy, 6'5", 210 pounds, is going to be the second biggest defender on the Seattle Kraken. Yeah. So we can definitely see the logic there. 2.7 mil. But 2.75 for each of the next 2 years.
Why do you not take the waivers exempt 24-year-old goalie?
This is the thing. And maybe Seattle, maybe I'm making too big a deal of the waivers exempt thing. You should want a goalie who is just a good goalie. And I suppose they saw their duo or their tandem. You don't say duo, you say tandem. I suppose they saw their tandem as Driedger and Vanacek. Kakinen was number 3. This is just my guess. Joey Decord is number 3. And every year there's 1,000,001 goalies available. If you need a third goalie, and like you said, there's free agency, there's trades. I really don't think the Seattle Kraken are done in that category.
I wonder if this is a side deal, because
could be.
I think like the 725 is nothing in comparison to what you pay in the open market for a goalie. That's what Kakinen would have been paid. And like, he's no Jack Campbell, but he had a stretch this year where he went 9-0. Like that's legitimate numbers right there.
It's a big thing. So there could be a side deal there. But the more I look at Carson Soucy, the more I'm like, you know what? It's a pretty good pick. Minnesota had several good players exposed, despite the fact that they bought out Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. Never a dull moment, with the Minnesota Wild. There really never does seem to be. Do we have time for anything from the chat? I've been ignoring the chat.
Yeah, let's do a question. Yeah, we haven't done one like an hour.
Click like, click subscribe, tell all your friends. Well, Jesse, there's been some stuff. Any crazy trade predictions? That was from Dave. That's that's a tough one. I gotta think, because there were so many weird deals leading up to the protected list, like the Ryan Ellis deal to Philadelphia. How many people even remember that Ryan Ellis is on the Philadelphia Flyers right now? But when a lot of deals like that happen and there's a flurry of activity, you got to remember these guys were just on the phone. These guys were just on the phone with each other, so something could be cooking. Mm-hmm. I mean, Dubas obviously has his Galaxy brain hat on with the McCann trade, which again we argued could be good. I wonder who he calls. Pittsburgh just lost 2 forwards in one fell swoop by losing Jared McCann and Brandon Tanev. Who knows if they bet on that? So, right. And also the big factor there with Pittsburgh, new management, who hasn't really had a chance to play with their toys yet.
This is their first off season.
And they got a real opportunity to make a lot of noise. Sorry,
even a place like Edmonton, like you're going to lose. Maybe you lose Larson. That hasn't come up yet, but that's the rumor.
What do they do?
What do you do with your defense there? That was a core piece of your defense, and you got to go fill that slot.
And you say the easy answer is Tyson Barrie. That's not the answer at all. Like no. You're talking about 2 players who are the exact opposite of each other. Adam Larson, a lot of Oilers fans today, I was like, wait a sec, I thought you didn't like this guy. He was really good. He was dealing with a tragedy in his family, and he was dealing with back injuries, and I guess he got to a good place this season, and he was very good for the Oilers. You don't replace Adam Larson with Tyson Barrie. Those guys aren't the same. Tyson Barrie's the first defender to ever lead the league in scoring among defensemen and not get a Norris vote. Like, that should tell you everything you need to know. Extremely good at putting up points. He can be good on your power play. He's not Adam Larson. You need guys on your penalty kill. Well, they just got Duncan Keith. Yeah, which way does he shoot? Like, do you understand? They right. have this.
And the deal for Larson too was it looks like great value, like what's rumored that he's going to get paid. And it's a shame that Edmonton couldn't lock him up, because now they have to go out and, okay, you get Duncan Keith, but now you have a bigger hole to fill.
Tyler asks, what are your favorite picks so far? I like how much time we spent on Morgan Geekie. Everyone's like, what? There's nothing to even say here. And I'm like, want to bet? And in a way, Carson Soucy, because I found him really intriguing. But I really got to say, there were so many good players available that Seattle wasn't seduced by. And I'm so glad that they got someone who I just like as a player and as a person in Jordan Eberle. To me, that's great. I mean, if you're going to get a Seattle Kraken jersey because they're sick, but you want a name on the back and you're not sure who to get, I think Eberle's a pretty safe bet, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Who do you like so far?
I look at the Joey Decord pick and I say thumbs up to Ottawa, because that made me take a look at Ottawa's goaltending situation. And I was like, oh, wow, they actually have a little bit of depth there, and they could afford to lose a great goalie who could be great in the future, like Joey Decord. And like, I think they're a lot closer than it looks. I know there was rumors today that they're trying to move Tierney. I think that's probably
my guy.
Is that's your guy? Picking the draft. Yeah, I think that's probably somebody you can get some assets for. And Ottawa looks a lot closer than they were last year, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams this year.
Another thing, I gotta believe Matt Murray finds it. I gotta believe, or at least gets it like back on the rails a little bit. This guy won back-to-back cups, and it wasn't an accident. It wasn't an accident. There's something there in this player.
The skill I believe in himself still, it exists there. Like, he didn't lose the physical ability to stop pucks at a rate to win a Stanley Cup. Like that still exists for Matt Murray, just a matter of him trying to get it again. And I feel like in Ottawa, if they get a great system around him, there's a chance he could get it back. And if Matt Murray doesn't have it, you have Anton Forsberg to back him up, and you have Gustafsson. Like there are options in Ottawa, and it's an exciting time for the franchise. So I want to see what they do this year.
Yeah, I don't think you forget how to play hockey.
No.
After winning 2 cups. So I just don't think it happens. And that's not me trying to be everybody's friend. I truly believe it. The pick is in. Who we got next? Calle Järnkrok from the Nashville Predators. So this was a fairly obvious pick that I said want to bet and galaxy brained and pick someone else. But I think, did you have Järnkrok in your?
No, I went the fun route. I took Ryan Johansson. In my mock draft, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have a first line center eventually. If you think that's Ryan Johansson, whatever. But that's who I took.
Jesse, you're one of my best friends. This is a horrible pick.
Are you telling me he's not worth $8 million?
No, like not even close. Not even close.
What if I said I took Matt Duchene? What if I said I wanted Matt Duchene?
Let's talk about Matt Duchene for a sec. So, Matt Duchene had the easy task of being the best $8 million center on the Nashville Predators. And this past season, he didn't. Like, he wasn't even that, bro. Like, he had 6 goals, 7 assists, 13 points in 34 games. What? I'm sure he fought injuries. Man, like okay, not being mean about it. He had the second best season of an $8 million center on the Nashville Predators. But enough about those two. Järnkrok, he's on the final season of actually a pretty lengthy contract, $2 million per. Just a really, really consistent player. Sort of like Donskoy in the sense, he's going to hit double-digit goals every year, not hit 20. He's hit double-digit goals in every season since his sophomore season without hitting 20. And he's hit 30 points in every season since his sophomore season, except for one, and this past season, which I'm going to say doesn't count because he missed 7 games in a season that was already shortened to 56. I had Yakov Trenin. I like the big fella.
I saw some Nashville fans upset they didn't protect Carrier instead, Alexander Carrier, but it is what it is.
Oh well, you didn't lose him, did you? Vince Dunn with the St. Louis Blues. So the Blues were one of those teams that had several really good players. Vince Dunn. I had Tarasenko because he's the exciting pick. I started to think Jaden Schwartz when I listened to 31 Thoughts. But if you listen to Ron Francis and you look at the way the wind is blowing, they're hoarding defensemen, and this guy needs an opportunity. You talk about a guy, like, we're all looking for the next William Karlsson, right? That's the easy one. Let's look for the next Shea Theodore, right? The defenseman that everyone gave up on. It could be Vince Dunn. He'll need a new contract, though. I'm excited to see what he gets. From Winnipeg, another team that had 3, at least, excellent players exposed. Yep. Sami Niku was a bit of an off-the-board pick, but I really like him. Dylan DeMello, I thought, was an absolute slam dunk.
That was my pick.
It was everybody's pick.
But, Mason Appleton's just as good.
No, he's not.
No?
He's good. He's very good. He needs a new deal. Oh wait, no, sorry. I'm still on Vince Dunn's page. I'm sorry.
Appleton's got 1 year left, $900,000. He's 25. He plays the power play and he penalty kills. Like he's an asset to have. Like I understand that Dylan DeMello probably, hey, you want the blue line or you want the right hand defenseman, but it's just as valuable to have Mason Appleton on your team.
So, and that's the key thing. And let me retract what I said. So I love Dylan DeMello. Remember him from my days with the Mississauga Steelheads. They need players to play on their team. And I keep thinking about like highest value. We've said how many times over the stream, the Kraken have enough D-men. They have more than enough. They have an army of them. They had too many without drafting Dylan DeMello. Mason Appleton, we got to see a lot of them this year with the North Division. Yep. And the Jets, obviously high octane offense, but I was amazed how often with that high octane offense, I notice Mason Appleton at every shift. Every shift he's out there, he's just a nuisance. He's annoying. 6'2", 12 goals, 13 assists for 25 points in 56 games, nearly a half a point a game player, who may get a bigger opportunity than he did with the Jets. Yeah, it's not the worst pick, but I got to think Jets fans are relatively pleased because talk about the Jets could afford to lose Appleton a lot more than they could DeMello.
Yes, they were already thin on D, and it would have really hurt if they lost Dylan DeMello.
Yes, I think that's one of those picks that worked out for both teams. From the Anaheim Ducks, he was there for, 16 games? He was there for a hot minute. Hayden Fleury. Jesse, what do you think?
This is a guy that Ron Francis drafted. I think this isn't a surprise at all that Hayden Fleury is now a Seattle Kraken. I think Ron Francis knows him well. He selected him in the 7 years ago in the draft. So, yeah, he could play on the left and right side, according to Cat Friendly. 1 year left at $1.3 million. I believe the Ducks gave up a 6th-round pick and Henkenpaw for Hayden Fleury. And then, he barely played for the team, and they got him for this exact purpose. And now he's going to fulfill his purpose for the Ducks and become a Seattle Kraken.
$1.3 million against the cap. Here's how much Ron Francis likes this guy. Picked him in the Seattle draft. He also picked him 7th overall in 2014, ahead of, speaking of the Winnipeg Jets, Nikolai Ehlers and also William Nylander. I remember being at this draft, and I was stunned, legitimately stunned, when the Carolina Hurricanes announced they were picking Hayden Fleury. Not because he's bad, but because there were these two players who everyone kept talking about. Oh, we don't know which one's going to go before the other, but they're both going to be really good. And it was William Nylander and Nikolai Ehlers. Look how their careers have gone. But defense, sometimes they take a little bit longer. At 25, it's a lot longer. But he's played nearly 200 games. Again, there's another guy. Maybe he gets a bigger opportunity. 6'3", and he's the third. He's only the third tallest defender. And 208 pounds. I think he's only the third heaviest. It'll
be fun after to look at the Kraken when they're all formed and how they average out amongst the rest of the NHL. Like, are they going to be the league's tallest team on day one of the season?
On the back end, I mean, we're looking at their goaltending and going, oh, I don't know, I might have picked that guy, and it doesn't matter, because if you go anywhere near them, someone's gonna decapitate you
with their tallness. They'll knock you over with their height.
Just unhinge their jaw and eat your head, just eat your entire head. It's amazing to me, as we go through these guys, how large the Seattle Kraken are. On defense, and here we are. There's not a lot of spots available.
And we have Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, San Jose,
and the Kings. We got 3 Canadian teams left. I'm really. Someone in the chat, please tell me we're going to get trades after this. Please tell me, because I want to find out what the side deals were.
So trades are halted until 1 p.m. tomorrow.
But announce them now.
Is the technical rule. So, but I think, you announce them now. All the insiders are going to know it before 1 p.m. tomorrow. So what's the point of holding off on all the trades and all the side deals if everybody knows them already?
Guys, don't hold on to the news. I broke one of the picks today. There are no secrets here. I broke one of them, for crying out loud. And I half broke Columbus because I said no Domi.
Yeah, you said that on the podcast on Monday earlier. Yeah.
I got 1.5 picks. I said it would be Kevin Stenlund, not Bayreuther, but I knew it wouldn't be Domi, and he was a very popular pick. And I knew it'd be John Quenneville. Guys, there's nothing sacred here. Gimme right now. Gosh darn it.
I think they'd be way too stringent about it, and they hold off till 1 p.m. and then everybody on Twitter will know by tonight, by midnight, all the trades will start rolling in, and then by 1 p.m. it'll be very anticlimactic if you were already on the internet.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I don't know.
Whatever.
Well, what are Steve and Jesse going to talk about? And there you are, 30,000 of you.
Talk about the next time people will spoil things.
Yeah, speaking of which, click like, click subscribe, tell all your friends. Okay. Do that. Do we have time for something from the chit chat?
Yeah. Do you have any more questions?
Let me see. They've asked most of them. Oh, okay. Olivon, which team will be this year's Florida Panthers? And in brackets, that's regret their expansion decisions.
Oh, that's what they meant.
It's funny, but well, we're a few years removed from that. And right now I'm like, a good team, but you got to remember a few years ago, they lost Marchessault and Riley Smith in one fell swoop. And wasn't it Matheson who they gave an 8-year deal to for some reason? Or was it Pissick? Or was it was someone who they shouldn't have protected?
Right. It was somebody much more valuable much less valuable than Marchessault.
Yeah. Without knowing who made a side deal, I cannot believe it's John Quenneville in Chicago. I like without there being a side deal. I really can't. Part of me wonders if Winnipeg is in there. Jim Benning, I don't know what the plan is there, so I pick him by default, even though we don't know his pick. They lost Bolton, so I doubt it's him.
I wonder if Lou. Do you think Lou kicked in a side deal for them to take Eberle in the contract? Because I know the Islanders kind of wanted that to happen.
So what's interesting there, that's a very good point, is if I'm Ron Francis, I can go to Lou, and I know it's Lou, and I got to worry about, he might punch me in the head or something. But I can say, hey, I don't have to take Bailey or Eberle. So sweeten the pot a little bit. Pick number 27.
Now this
if
is
like, I'm giving you Eberle, kick rocks. We got Mark Giordano from the Calgary Flames. Supposedly a side deal here, according to one Jesse Blake and no one else.
Yeah, I'm reporting.
I'm
reporting that Giordano is going to go to the Rangers. That's what I'm reporting.
Reporting that you saw it on Twitter. I mean, this dude, he's so good. He's such a good player. I know he's old. Won the Norris a couple years ago. Not that old. And I'm being told he's on stage with a jersey.
So no deal to the Rangers. That's your next captain.
That is very interesting. And okay, let me ask you this. Is it a Rangers jersey? So I guess there's no side deal. Wow.
Yeah, that's not someone you're flipping in the trade. You have him on stage giving him a Kraken jersey. Like you fly him out immediately from Calgary to Seattle. Like that's Giordano staying.
Jesse, where did you read this so we can drag them? We need to drag them.
The reports of Giordano to the Rangers. I'll bring it up. Hold on.
I'm seeing lots of. Yeah, so there was a tweet. I don't want to dunk on this person. I'll read the tweet without reading their name. Hearing Seattle is going to take Colin Blackwell from the Rangers, but there could be a trade in the works. See how they left it open. There could be a trade in the works. And then in brackets for D. Mark Giordano ? That changes the pick and allows the Rangers to keep Blackwell. So you could see what all the fuss was about. That's a very, very, very large deal. This keeps the door open wider for Eichel, like you mentioned. But Calgary's going to miss this player.
Oh, yeah. It's won the Norris 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And like that's a legitimate top 10 defenseman in the league that Seattle just got.
Like you got to think like Noah Hannafin's role is about to increase a lot. Boy, if Colorado is not aggressive in the in free agency or the trade market, I really got to wonder what they're doing.
Calgary.
What did I say? Colorado. Sorry, I got producer Drew on the brain. Love you, boo. And I mean, even he had 9 goals and 26 points in 56 games. So like he's a healthy player, played in all 56 games, 9 goals. Like what pace is that? He was on pace for somewhere between 10 and 15 goals. Which he often is, by the way. He had a bit of an anomaly in the 1920 season. The season before he had 17, 13, 12, 21, 11, 14. He does this. Like, he's an underrated offensive performer. Like, when it comes to goal scoring defensemen, we, tend to put that on like Shea Weber or, Carlson's a little out of date, but you know what I mean? We don't really put it. There's offensive defensemen, but we don't necessarily mean goal scoring defensemen. Those are two different things.
I was trying to look at the Flames here and see if there is a way that you protect Giordano, you don't lose your captain to Seattle. But it looks like they did the best they could with the numbers they had.
Here's an enormous failure before we get to the next pick. How don't you move him at the deadline?
There you go.
I don't care. I know Montreal was 18th and they made the Stanley Cup final. You were behind them, man. How don't you get anything for Giordano? That's unacceptable. Yeah. Anyway, pick number 27, Edmonton, Adam Larson. Supposedly they have him locked up to a deal. I don't think an official number was reported, but this is we're seeing a theme.
4 years, $4 million.
We're seeing a theme here. Oh, wow. Okay, so I'm seeing a clip from the broadcast, by the way. Giordano said, "This is the first time I've ever been drafted." So that's really funny because he was an undrafted player.
Right.
That's really funny. I like that very much. Anyway, Adam Larson, we're seeing a theme. The Kraken are gearing up to be an awful team to play against. They're going to smash you against the boards. The net's going to be impossible to get around. Adam Larson, 6'3", 208 on hockeydb.com. There is a very, very obvious MO. And I know we talked about market inefficiencies with forwards and the little guy versus the big guy. I don't think the big defenseman ever really went out of style. The big immobile defenseman did. I don't think those are really around anymore. Adam Larson, very good pick for the Seattle Kraken.
And we got another one.
Here we go. This one's weird. This one is weird to me because we were grasping at straws with the LA Kings. This is Curtis McDermott. Yeah. We were grasping at straws.
I was going to take, in my mock draft, I took Carl Grundstrom.
I know
Cale Clegg was also an option there. But yeah, they went with the undrafted 27-year-old who makes $875 for one more year.
There's Lizotte, Austin Wagner, but McDermott can play left or right D according to Cap Friendly. Okay. I've seen his cap hit. You said his age. I know he doesn't get a lot of points. I'm going to look at his height and I'm going to freak it. 6'5". You're joking me. This team's huge. The Seattle Kraken are freaking enormous. That's unbelievable. So they could trade several of these guys and still have the biggest D-core in the league. Holy cow.
Big defenseman is clearly their MO.
Yes, Jesse, that's Alexander True.
Stop it.
You see,
this one's also a weird one.
It's not as weird as you think.
Okay.
I'm trying to who did I had Ryan Donato.
I think I know why it's not as weird as I think. Because I saw this earlier. It was because he played for the Seattle Thunderbirds. And then you bring back the hometown guy.
Okay. I got it. I looked at it. So he's from Denmark. Jesse, you're not going to believe this. He's 6'5".
No way.
Dude, this team, what percent of the league 6'5" and above are members of the Seattle Kraken right now? It's double digit. There aren't many players in the NHL who are 6'5" and up. So anyway, he doesn't have a goal in the NHL yet. In 19 games, he's only got the 5 assists. He's a center/right wing. But if I'm not mistaken, yes. So he has good AHL numbers. 2 years ago, he had 25 points in 40 games with the Barracuda. And then he had 20 points in 27 games this past season. So he strikes me as a guy who has good. He's good in the AHL, undrafted player, by the way. He's good in the AHL. Could maybe just need an opportunity to break out. And for God's sake, he's 6'5". Oh, this guy, man.
I'm trying to look up how many players in the NHL are above 6'5". I want to make your theory. I want to prove it correct.
Well, it's simply wild. It's simply wild. And you talk about, what are you guys even gonna discover on this stream? We already know all the picks. Well, I didn't know all of that. That is positively wild. Wild. So I think you go to bio info. Here we go.
You got it?
Yeah, so Zdeno Chara, so they do it in inches, which is infuriating. But Zdeno Chara is the tallest player in the NHL at 81 inches. Tyler Myers, 80 inches. Jamie Alexiak, who is on the Kraken, 79. I'll leave that page open. We got another pick here. What are they, 6'10"? Who do we got? We got Cole Lind. I'm looking it up right now.
Look it up.
How tall is Cole Lind? Give me it. Give
Cole
me it right
Lind
now.
was I think the more obvious pick from this bunch.
Extremely.
From the Canucks. He was a right wing who moved to center this year. I know that. And then I know Ian McIntyre of Sportsnet, he wrote before the draft that Lind was the best prospect made available by the Canucks. Lind made a promising move to center from right wing in the NHL, has enough pedigree as a scorer to be tradable asset for Seattle, even if Lind's NHL future is far from guaranteed. Thank you, McIntyre, for that.
Only played 8 games in the AHL, but he had 8 points. And one of 2, I believe, 22-year-olds taken. I mean, that's really, to quote Staffengraph, that's tidy business. Yeah, 8 points in 8 games in the AHL, and then the year before he had 44 in 61, but I guess it was playing a different position. He did play a cup of coffee with the Canucks this year, 7 games. Didn't get any points, but the Canucks had a miserable season. And oh yeah, I should probably also mention it wasn't just miserable in the results category. Like a lot of it was bad. So that concludes.
That's it.
The expansion draft. We're not gonna finish just yet. We're gonna do a few questions, not too many because Jesse and I are recording a podcast after this. But I can actually we started to answer this, and we can really get into it. So Jamie Alexiak is tied for the 3rd tallest player in the NHL at 79 inches, and the Kraken have him. Then there's Logan Stanley and Tage Thompson who tie him. Victor Hedman, Bjugstad, Tenorti, Hamilton, Parayko, Buddy Robinson, Ben Harper, Michael McCarron, Sam Morin, Nikita Zadorov. Okay, so there are actually quite a few. There are quite a few. I was going to say are all tied at 78. And what's hilarious is they could have taken Zadorov.
Yeah, from Chicago.
I tell you what, they don't have a monopoly on big guys, but holy crap.
There's clearly, this is their strategy. They want it to be big. And like, I don't know if that's the right way to go, because it seems like so many teams are focusing on speed. So maybe you're trying to do, like, I know the word you love is market inefficiency. Maybe that's the direction Ron Francis saw. Maybe he's like, hey, big guys are the thing that's exclusive in this league, so I'm going to go that direction. But I don't know. I'm interested to see who's the goal scorers on this team, because you look at the roster point blank and you're like, okay, but who's scoring goals?
So very interesting question then, relating to what you're asking, from Mike. Over under 80 points for the Seattle Kraken next season. I think over. I do. 80's bad, man. Like you forget the last place team gets somewhere in like the 60-ish range. To make the playoffs, you got to be around like 94, 95. 80's bad. You miss the playoffs by like 7-8 wins, you're bad.
Yeah, I like betting. I like betting on sports, and if you're giving me an over/under on 80, I'm hammering the over on that, and I'm putting a lot of money, because they're not done. I think that's very clear based on the rumors, and you look at the roster, and 80 points is I'm not going to say it's easy to get, but a mediocre team could pull off 80 points.
Tom McCallis, or is it Michaels? I'm sorry. Why did Seattle choose to pick a team that won't win for the next 4 years instead of doing what Vegas did and pick a team to win immediately. Michael, that is revisionist history.
Right.
Their big get was a goalie who just lost his job to Matt Murray. James Neal, who they basically said, "Hi, James, you have to do everything."
They also had to be paid to take Fleury.
They have to be paid to take Fleury. The flag bearer was Derek Engeland. They used 5 different goalies. I want to say Cody Eakin was on like their second line or something like that. We did not know Jonathan Marchessault was that good. We knew he was. They shouldn't have done it. We didn't know he was that good. We didn't know William Karlsson. William Karlsson was nobody. He had like how many career goals? Maybe a dozen.
Thomas Tatar didn't work out.
Thomas Tatar should have and didn't.
Right.
Like nothing. Everyone's forgetting. No one thought the Vegas Golden Knights were going to be good. Right? So if you think the Kraken are going to suck, there's music to my ears if I'm hockey ops management with the Seattle Kraken. I mean, nothing about Vegas made sense. So if you're looking for a replica of Vegas and you don't like what Seattle did, you think they look like crap, then they're right on track. Landon, Jesse, this is a question for you, Jesse.
Hello.
Who is the biggest name you think Seattle will land via trade or free agency?
I still have my fingers crossed for the Landeskog deal. I think I've said it like 3 times during this show, but you have all this money, unless his plan was to wait out the expansion draft and then sign with Colorado because now they have a little bit more cap space. Like maybe Donskoy opens up the books for Sakic, and now he can actually sign Landeskog. But I think they go after him. I don't think Tarasenko's probably in the cards because I think unless St. Louis is retaining, it's probably not going anywhere. But yeah, my pick would probably be Landeskog. Who do you see Seattle getting?
Well, so you know what's interesting there, Jesse? It's not who I see Seattle getting. It's who I see calling Seattle up.
Take our Doug.
What you want Dougie Hamilton, but you don't have the cap space? Call me up. You want Tarasenko, but you don't have the space? Call me up. You want Landeskog and you don't have the space? Call me up. We're open for business. We got big players, not big cap hits. Call Ron's old whatever we're doing Emporium. I don't even know. Expansion team Emporium. There's going to be a flurry of activity in the next few days. GMs don't know how to put their phone down leading up to the draft. And like, can I just say everyone's thinking a little differently after the last year and a half. There's less of tomorrow.
You're also thinking about different things.
Yes.
You know, I think more than other past seasons, you're thinking about the salary cap because it's going to be flat. And that's something you didn't expect at all. Like you expected it to go up every year. And now you think it's going to be flat or at least raise by less percentage over the next couple of years. And then you're thinking about budgets as well, because these billionaires like to save their money on their hockey teams. So yeah, there's so much more thinking going on that you're going to see GMs get creative here.
Also, Seattle's leverage just went down. Right. So they can't just extort you for a first and a third anymore. So you call them up as a regular general manager and not an expansion general manager. And you go, hey, what about now? What about now?
Except if you're Mark Bergevin, then you never talk to Ron Francis ever again.
No, then you send him a picture of a middle finger. I think it's Ron who should be sending it to him, though. Hey, man, we wanted Jake Allen, you piece of. Anyway. Jonathan Allen. Any relation? Jonathan Allen. Where does Dougie Hamilton end up?
There were rumors that they tried to work out a deal with Dougie Hamilton in the little window that they had to talk to him, and nothing came about. They couldn't do it. So I wonder if that means Seattle's off the board or if there's still a chance he goes there. But then there's also 30 other teams.
I think, everyone's talking about Zach Hyman and the Edmonton Oilers. Bro, open the vault for Dougie Hamilton because you got a massive hole on that right side right now. Take all the money you were going to give Larson and Barry, put it in a little bag, and hand it to Dougie Hamilton.
That's a good. I would love that move for Edmonton.
Okay. Oh, this is impossible. So sorry, producer Drew just sent me this. Cap Friendly tweeted, Seattle Kraken made no trades with any teams prior to the expansion draft.
That's not serious.
I'm stunned. Now, so this is very interesting. So it's a copycat league, right? And I think there's some peer pressure here. One, GMs know they look stupid from the Vegas expansion draft. Two, I think there were a few that had it on their mind, you know what, I'm going to do this. And then they're like, oh, but I'm going to be the guy. No one else has done it, and I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to be the one who made the side deal, and what if I screw it up? But there were teams who screwed up royally with their side deals. But there were a couple that worked out okay. Now I'm wondering, what's the story going to be a few years from now? Listen, I know it was going to cost a first and a third, but for crying out loud, why didn't you protect this player? Because they're going to go on to have massive success with the Seattle Kraken. That one's.
So you think teams refuse to deal with Seattle?
I think Seattle charged far too much. Like, right. I know Vegas got a lot from other teams. There were also some like really creative deals. We forget like Mikhail Grabovski was traded in an enormous cap dump. So was David Clarkson. Just a bunch of really good old Leaf contracts. But it sounds like Seattle was asking for something very different, and teams just weren't willing to do it.
If this is the roster they're going with, well, I guess this is the roster they're going with heading into free agency. Like, there's still so many questions. They're still not done. Like, no. They didn't make any trades pre-draft, but they're going to make post-draft trades and signings because you have so many holes to fill. Like, you don't have holes to fill on your defense. They did a great job with defensemen, but those defensemen got to turn into, some got to stay on the roster and some have to become offensive output because you can't have a team that has no offensive output.
Everyone's going to rush to make their moves starting tomorrow, and some teams are going to miss out. And Ron's going to call them up and say, how do you like me now? And there's still 2 days worth of the draft. The free agency's July. I keep screwing up the month. July 28th, one of the J ones. And then I said August 1st is sort of where it's going to quiet down a little bit. We're not going to know what the Seattle Kraken look like for over a week.
Right.
One more question before we end it here.
Let's do it.
From Lyman. Who leads the team in goals and points next season? Is that player even on the roster?
Quick answer, no.
Very good question. I'm going to say Yanni Gourde. He's, I think, the highest paid player. No, Giordano is. I could see Giordano potentially leading them in points, but I think it'll be Gourde. That's a player who, at different points in his career, with Tampa a few years ago, a little higher in the lineup. In the AHL, he was a demon. He was a demon. Not D-man, a demon. And I think he's going to be able to adjust to his new role higher in the lineup. I think he's good for 25 goals, maybe 30 points. Or sorry, 30 points. 25. Can you imagine? 25 goals and roughly 60 points. The reason I said 30 is I think he's going to lead the team in points, but I think the leading goal getter will be Jordan Eberle. He's going to hit 30.
I don't think that guy's on the roster yet. I think there are so many moves to make here where you flip some of these guys for somebody who's going to have some better offensive numbers, whether that's Jack Eichel, who's still out there, who knows, whether it's the rumored Ryan Strome, who that deal never happened, apparently didn't exist. But like there's opportunities here to get somebody who's a bona fide goal scorer, and I think Seattle does it by the time they hit the ice for the first time.
Man, the Chicago Blackhawks lost John Quenneville and nothing else, man. Not bad.
Just because.
Extremely different vibe this year. Extremely different vibe. I'm so excited to see what Seattle does with the rest of their summer. And everybody, what are you going to do with the rest of your summer, everyone? Leave a comment in the comment box down below. I hope it's have fun and crush a beer on your forehead and have some s'mores. Jesse Blake, my goodness, thank you so much for joining me here on the Sportsnet YouTube
thank you for
channel.
having me. I started it by saying it's a pleasure to be on Watch the Blank with Steve Dangle, and I'm glad I could be here.
I'm glad you could be here too. So everybody, it's customary. If you know, you know, say it with me. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell your friends. Jesse, you say the last thing.
Go Kraken.